welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. I'm your co-host, Julia.
And this is Barry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Zone.
Yes, we are doing Twilight Zone The Movie from 1983.
Now, how much of a Twilight Zone fan are you, Julia? Have you ever seen an episode of The Twilight Zone?
How dare you? Yes, I have.
Because I'm going to pull rank right now. So in 2007, I went to the Twilight Zone convention in Hackensack, New Jersey. I'm a huge, huge Twilight Zone fan. It's not because of this movie. It's because of the series. As a kid, obviously, I was born after this show was on originally, but as a child, I remember my father, he had his big videotape collection in his office, and I'd wanted to see this movie. And the memory I have of this film, the first time I was even aware of it, I was way too young. I must have been 6, 7 years old. And it just happened to be on HBO, and my dear friend Stephen White and my mom and I happened upon it. So we're watching, I believe, the third segment, which we'll talk about. And as soon as the third segment ends, and I thought it was pretty cool being a little kid, suddenly we have a shot of an airplane. And my mom goes, no. She turns off the TV and she turns to Steven, who is not only my friend, but also kind of my surrogate older brother. She said, don't tell Barry what happens. You cannot tell Barry about that part of the movie. So for years, I didn't know what that was about. And I'd heard a few things. So I went to my dad's tape room, I bet he has that Twilight Zone The Movie, so I could finally see this thing. What he had was a Twilight Zone marathon. And I popped that in and I watched that. And it had an episode from the original series called Eye of the Beholder. And the twist of that is so incredible. Even though the episode's in black and white, I'd never seen anything like it, and it really introduced me to.
I think that was the first one I saw.
Yeah, you remember that one?
Yeah.
It's incredible. And then after that, I watched Time Enough at Last with Burgess Meredith, who narrates Twilight Zone The Movie. It was just like more, please, and I became so addicted. I found every video cassette I could whenever the marathon would happen on New Year's Eve, whether it was USA Network or the Sci-Fi Channel. I would always watch it. So Twilight Zone. I think it's for me, it's like the greatest. Just the greatest television series ever. And Rod Serling is just one of our greatest writers. He obviously had a huge impact on television. So yeah, looking at this movie, this film is a very different thing. It's very much an 80s movie. It's very contemporary in some ways. There are things about this movie I love. There's things about this movie I don't love, but I'm fascinated by this movie for a lot of reasons. I used to teach a class at University of Colorado Springs called Hollywood History, and whenever I'd get to the 80s, this was always the 80s movie I'd show because it is kind of a prototypical 80s summer movie. It was an early example of a film, based on a very popular television series. And it's also an example of Steven Spielberg not performing on top of his game, in my opinion. And the film has this really, really noteworthy history, which we'll get into. But so this is your first time ever seeing it the whole way through? Or you seem to remember?
No, I've never seen it. Okay. I think I did see...
You had a bit of deja vu.
I had a little bit of deja vu on the third one. And I wonder if you had just shown it to me kind of as a standalone.
I don't think so. I think I would have shown you the entire movie.
I don't...
Really? You think I showed you one part?
Or it's the only part I remember. No, it doesn't. You're right. I don't know. Maybe I have seen that. I just literally blocked it out.
Because I do know there are a couple of times, because the thing that you and I have done throughout our marriage is you pick a movie. So I'll come to you with a stack of 3 or 4 DVDs and you'll be like, no, okay, that one. So I think Twilight Zone is probably in that stack at 5 times over the past 20 years.
Yeah, and I always rejected it.
Definitely not.
Well, I didn't even really want to watch it last night, but...
It's 40 years old now, which is one of the reasons I want to watch it, I want to write about it, and it's been a couple of years since I've seen it, although I know it very well. I'm probably a little overly familiar with the movie. I used to watch it every year when I was teaching my college class, but anyway, let's get into it.
All right.
Let's go.
Hey, you stole my line. Just kidding.
Oh, sorry.
Let's get into it. Okay, so we open up with Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks driving late at night, and I think this is the prologue to the movie. It's not that long. What do you think, 10 minutes?
Well, it's definitely long if you're walking in late to this movie because there's no opening credits. The movie just starts and it's them.
Yeah, just singing along to Creedence Clearwater, right?
Yeah, revival. Yeah, I love it so much because if you're walking into this movie late, and if this was the way movies were back in the 80s, like it is now, where there's like 20 minutes of previews, you're probably sitting there going like, hey, is this the Twilight Zone movie? Are we in the right theater? What is this?
Exactly. So they're just like singing along and, kind of for a long time. And they're just kind of driving in the middle of nowhere.
I'm always intrigued by this because I love this part of the movie so much. And I'm wondering, like, are they friends? Was Dan Aykroyd a hitchhiker that Albert Brooks picked up? Is this like a work?
Exactly.
We don't really know. And I love that we don't know. Because on the one hand, they're comfortable with each other, but they don't really know each other that well. So I'm always kind of leaning into that, is this like a like a road trip situation, like a work friend, like what's the scenario here? But yeah, it happens very quickly and it's really funny. I got to say, when Albert Brooks is singing badly to Creedence Clearwater Revival, that's exactly the way I sing when no one else is around and I'm driving and I'm blasting the radio.
That's how we all sing when nobody's around.
I'm like, oh man, I'm there, man. Yeah, like singing badly and adding lyrics. Yeah, exactly. Guilty as charged.
So at one point, the tape player, you guys remember tape players, eats the tape. And he's there like, oh man, now what are we going to do for entertainment?
This was always terrible. And yeah, because you gotta pull the actual physical tape out of it's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Albert Brooks says, you want to see something scary? And then he turns off his headlights and starts driving just in the dark. And he's like just saying crazy stuff like, oh, who could be ahead of us? Oh, I don't know. Oh, maybe there's some ducks. Like, I don't even know what he's saying.
There could be nuns out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
And
by the way, I wonder how much of this is improvised. It doesn't. It doesn't feel scripted.
I bet most of it was improvised because he's just saying crazy stuff.
And I got to say, like this, the looseness of it, because it visually it is kind of sinister, but because of the lightweight tone that the actors are playing, it is reminiscent of the beginning of An American Werewolf in London. It really is, like with Griffin Dunne and David Naughton wandering through the wilderness. I love that the film has that kind of tonal connection. Anyway, please continue.
That's okay. Dan Aykroyd, he's like, I don't like this game. So then they play a game where they hum like TV openers.
All right. Bum 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 do 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 do. Perry Mason. You got it. Bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba pa pa. Bonanza. All right. Ba 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 da 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 da. No. Da 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 da. Fred Gwynn was in Beverly Hillbillies. No. Car 54. That's it. All right. Thanks for the Fred Gwynn. Absolutely. All right. How about this one? Ba 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 dum ba 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 hoo da bum ba dum bum. Know it? Ba 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 bum. Look at that fossil. It's stuck over there in the tar. Bum bum. Look at that old man. He looks like an old ape. Bum bum. What is it? No. Look at that old bone. It could be worth $1. What is it? I don't know. Look at those two apes. This must be where they lived. Bum, bum. Look at that city. Let's continue to dig. What is it? Really don't know. It's National Geographic. National Geographic. Okay. All right. Okay, I got one for you. Okay. Yes. What is it? I don't know, but you're doing it great. Sounds like it was on CBS. You know what? I don't know. Book them down. Book them down. Book them down. One more hint. What was this? Locale. Surfboards. Locale. An island in the Pacific Ocean with Jack Lord. Yes. Oh, Jesus. I thought I was good at this. Did you ever watch The Twilight Zone?
And at one point, they do like the Twilight Zone
theme,
yeah.
Which is cool. It's like, oh, does this movie exist in a world where Twilight Zone's a TV show? That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so then they start talking about like their favorite Twilight Zone episodes. Very meta at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, they're talking about an episode I love called The After Hours. They discuss Time Enough at Last with Burgess Meredith. Yeah, they're just kind of going through it, and then they have an argument over like, no, that's a zone. No, that's the Outer Limits. No, that's a zone.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are dorks. I love them. I would totally love to be in the back seat with these guys.
And then Dan Aykroyd, he's like, pull over so I can show you something scary. And at this point, I'm like, okay, Albert Brooks, don't do it. Like, don't pull over so he can show you something scary. Like,
You really thought, like, you really saw something scary coming? Because the
No.
first time I saw it, I'm like,
Okay.
oh, he's going to, like, armpit fart, or he's going to, like,
no, I thought,
he's going to turn his eyelids inside out like my brother. It's honestly what I thought was going to happen.
no, I just thought, like, if I was on a road trip with somebody, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not pulling over.
Not pulling over for Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, I'm not pulling over. Like, we have places to go, people to see. Like, we have to get to our next crappy motel. I don't know. But he does.
He does.
Pulls over.
And then what happens, Jules?
And then Dan Aykroyd turns into a monster. Like this crazy green, like gremlin
Is
thing.
it green or blue?
Oh, I think it's blue.
I think the time, and I seriously love this opening so much. I think the timing of it is a little off because I think we hear it before we see it. And I think it would have been scarier if suddenly it's just, because like it's weird because Aykroyd, his hair changes white too. So it's like, was he wearing like a human mask? Like, what's the...
Oh, like what's the mechanism that he's turning into this thing?
Yeah.
It's really silly. Like it's gross, but it's
You
also
kind of
silly.
laugh because it is so outrageous. But I mean, it's startling and it is kind of violent, but it's not gory. It's just violent.
Yeah.
Well, we hear him go, ah, and then the camera pans up and we hear, no.
Yeah. So
And then Burgess Meredith is doing the narration instead of Rod Serling.
Right. So, okay, so then you were like, yeah, it's 4 movies in one. And I thought that was the first movie. But no, that's just the opener.
You're like, oh man, I got 4 to go. Ah.
Okay.
You're like erasing the check mark on your list. Like, that was the prologue. Oh, come on.
I know, I'm like, oh, 4 more of these? No, just kidding. It was good. Okay, so the first movie is called Time Out. And our character, Bill, is going to dinner with some friends.
Bill is played by the late, great Vic Morrow.
So he kind of goes into this like restaurant, bar, diner, late night place that he hangs out with his friends. And he's telling his friends that another guy got a promotion over him. And he's completely anti-Semitic. He's
For starters.
just like,
Oh, man.
it is outrageous what he says. He says like a Jew got this job over me. And,
You don't need to quote it.
well, no, I'm not going to quote it verbatim, but like, that's like kind of how it starts off.
He makes Archie Bunker seem
Yeah.
like conservative. I mean, yeah, the stuff he says is pretty outrageous.
No.
Even by today's, today's standards, it's way far over the top. But I mean, even for like 1983, I mean, it's pretty. It's ugly stuff.
It's like I've never heard anybody in real life say the stuff that this guy's saying. I mean, all the things he says, it's just like a cascade of super racism.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy we don't know anybody who's ever said anything like this.
No.
Let alone at a restaurant.
I mean, I don't know anybody, but I've never even overheard anybody.
It's crazy. I mean, and obviously racism is still a problem. Obviously there are people. I suppose there are people like
But
this.
I mean, he's racist against Black people. He's racist against
Everybody.
Vietnamese people. I mean, he's like very specific though about who he's racist
And
towards.
and the film doesn't excuse him, but I gotta say, like Morrow is playing it as this is a very sad guy. This is somebody who is broken. He is a veteran. He is, apparently he has no one. He's lost a promotion at work, and his idiotic way of adjusting to that is to lean into bigotry.
Right.
I'm not excusing
Because the
that.
job
but
was going to give him like 6,000 more dollars. I really needed that money.
Right.
Okay. But he says like, I'm an American. Doesn't that mean anything anymore?
yeah, that's a
was like,
key
wow.
key loaded line. Yeah, there's aspects of this stuff today where you go, okay.
No, he's just a terrible person. But
Yes, he is.
then, I mean, people overhear him and they're like, hey, dude, like, tone it down. Like, we're sitting right here. We can hear you,
The character has no restraint, but I got to say, John Landis wrote this and directed it as well. He also directed the prologue. And to Landis's credit, Morrow's character is the thing that's over the top in the scene. Like, he shows restraint when he shows the other characters. It doesn't, the scene like it doesn't lead to a fist fight. It's just that it's everybody in this restaurant overhearing this is exactly feeling the way we are. We are uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
This is, such an awful thing to witness, let alone be forced to listen to.
Right. I
Yeah.
wonder how the actor felt like saying all this garbage. Like,
Vic Morrow?
yeah. Did he ever talk about it?
Yeah, reportedly, he really thought this was a fantastic role, and he's right. It's a good role.
Mm-hmm.
It's the character there's a lot to play. And apparently he was really excited about it. All reports leading up to it.
Okay. Well, so our character, our racist character Bill here, walks out of the restaurant and is somehow magically in Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And he's on the street. There's, swastikas around and 3 Nazis come up to him and they're just speaking in German. And there's not even any subtitles. Like, we don't even really know
Which is what I love. The great choice, I think.
Yeah.
Is we're
just as confused as he is.
We're not adjusting to this any better than he is. It's very abrupt. It's suddenly he's in a completely different world. There's not enough good to be said about Jerry Goldsmith's score. The score is it's one of those Jerry Goldsmith scores that's both orchestral and electronic. And at this point, Goldsmith has this really eerie electronic hum going through the scene. It's very unsettling. So you're feeling like the discombobulation that Bill is. And I love that the Nazis come up to him. They see his Bloomingdale's card. They are not impressed.
Yeah, they look through his wallet and they're kind of like, what's this? I mean... Yeah, he's like, it's my credit card, my driver's license. I mean, they
and again, to the film's credit, none of this is played for laughs. I mean, this is John Landis. Like you figure, be like the Nazis, like, oh, you shop at Bloomingdale's, oh, pennies is far superior. No, none of that. No, like it's like we're meant to be afraid, and I don't know. I find it effective.
Okay, so he kind of gets away from them and escapes, but he gets shot in the arm. And so he goes into a building, into this random lady's apartment and asks for help. She just she goes to her open window and just calls down in French to the Nazis like, hey, he's up here. And he's like, what are you doing? So he escapes out her window and he gets shot at. I did kind of think this part was a little bit meant to be humorous, where he's standing outside on the building between these 2 windows and the Nazis are
they're making a game of it.
They're making a game of it where they're shooting at him but not hitting him, and they're just kind of laughing. And part of you is kind of like, oh, maybe they should just kill this guy because he's terrible. Okay, so he gets shot at, falls off the building, and when he stands up, he's at a KKK burning where these KKK members are...
They think he's black.
Yeah, they think he's black, but there's a burning cross. They're all dressed in their crazy outfits.
Yeah, it's a murderous situation.
Yeah.
It's not pageantry.
And he's yelling that he's I'm white, but they can't see that.
Yeah.
So they try to hang him and he escapes. He ends up going into a lake and they're shooting at him. He goes underwater and then it kind of cuts. He comes up and now he is in Vietnam. He's getting shot at and he's shot at
by American soldiers.
Yeah. He sees some Americans and he's like, hey, help me. And they just shoot at him. He gets exploded back to Nazi Germany.
Yeah, that's a good. A grenade knocks him into another time zone. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's back in Germany. He gets shot in the leg. They put a yellow star on him and they're dragging him and they put him on a train. And, he looks up and he can see all the other people on the train. And then this part is really sad where he's looking out through the slats of the train and he can see the restaurant where his friends are leaving and he's yelling at them, but they can't see him. Yeah. He literally is in another dimension. Mm-hmm. And they're just kind of chatting and then the train obviously taking them to a concentration camp and he's off to basically his death.
And that's how that segment ends. Yeah. It's a very eerie, spooky ending.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wow. Maybe they should play this episode for really racist people.
Well, it always ended the way it ended. It was supposed to have a different middle, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And I won't belabor this, but it deserves mentioning. It'd be kind of weird if not to mention this. So originally what happened was it used to be much more frenetic when he's bouncing between all these different time zones. There is this one really cool shot. It goes by so fast where Bill runs down a corner. The Nazis are chasing after him. And very quickly you see this glowing neon sign from the restaurant. So it's there's a lot of overlap between the different time periods.
Was he supposed to go to the different time periods like more than he did?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And at one point, the scene that's not in the movie, there was a scene where he basically finds himself in this hut in Vietnam. There's these two Vietnamese children, and he decides to save them. It's his moment of catharsis, and he basically takes the two kids, a boy and a girl, in his arm, runs across a lake. A river, as a GI helicopter fires down on him, and then a hut explodes. This big scene where he basically saves the kids. But then apparently what would happen was he comes back to a different time with the kids, Nazi Germany, and apparently the Nazis take the kids away from him. And then it's right back to where we see, where he's there with the Nazis, and they put the star on him, and that's how it ends. In the summer of '82, when they shot this sequence, to be as quick about it as possible and be as tasteful as I can about it, the explosions caused the helicopter to crash into Vic Morrow and the two children in that scene when they were filming it. A trial went on for years after the film.
It crashed into Bill, the actor?
Vic Morrow, Renee Chin, and Micah Denley, yeah.
Did they die?
Yes.
So they shot this scene and they had already, this was like the last scene they were shooting?
Yeah. It's not in the film, but the footage exists.
So they had already shot the ending before?
Yeah, they shot it out of sequence.
Oh my, I didn't know he died during this? Oh my gosh.
This is his last film.
Wow.
And
well, now I feel bad about saying he should have died by the Nazis because he actually.
We're talking about a character.
No, I know.
No, we're talking about a character. No, it's and it's one of these. It's the thing that makes the movie notorious and infamous, and understandably, audiences in 1983 struggled with being able to see anything past the tragedy when this film came out, because the trial went on for years, and Landis continued to direct while the trial went on. Like, he directed Three Amigos, and I believe he was working on Coming to America. He directed the Michael Jackson Thriller video all while he was on trial, because he was the director of the film. Apparently, there's two books about it that I've read. One's called Outrageous Conduct. The other one's called Special Effects. One is very even-handed. The other one's very much out for Landis. And I've read the trial transcript word for word, which also is out there. It's fascinating. There's all sorts of different opinions about it. It's still a very controversial case. My takeaway from it, for what it's worth, and it's not worth much, but apparently they did a test round where they shot off some of the explosions and pyrotechnics, and the helicopter even then kind of flinched. And apparently Landis famously said, he denied saying it. He said, "You ain't seen nothing yet," meaning that when they finally actually shoot it, they were going to make the pyrotechnics even bigger. And then the thing that's really, really hard to forgive, and this is something that came out in the trial, and Landis admitted to it, the two children were hired illegally.
Oh,
they weren't supposed to be there. The parents were hired under the table. That way they could have the kids there late at night.
Yeah.
So it was one of these things that it's, not only is what happened so gruesome and horrible, but those kids should not have been there in the first place. It's ugly. It's awful. And it continues to be this. I mean, it changed a lot of things. Like I said, the trial. I mean, the movie came out in '83. The trial went, I believe, until 1987.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
what was the conclusion of the trial?
Landis got off. I think everybody was acquitted.
Just big mistake.
Basically, they chalked it up to a technical thing with the helicopter. But to say the least, I mean, the explosions, the pyrotechnics, I mean, even the footage, not that I recommend anybody look at the footage, but it's out there. And you look at the size of the thing. Of course, the helicopter was knocked off its access because
of the explosions.
Yeah, it was so extreme. And, Morrow was holding on to these two actors, and he's trying to get across this body of water, and there's a huge helicopter above him. Mm-hmm. So, to say, I mean, it changed a lot of stunt laws, although not enough. And obviously, I mean, right now as we record this, we're in the midst of the Alec Baldwin thing, the Rush shooting. So unfortunately, these things do happen still. Yeah. This is not, and then of course in my teen years, we lost Brandon Lee because of a similar thing with the Rush shooting when they were making The Crow. So yeah, these things are just terrible. I don't know. I know apparently Steven Spielberg, a few things. Again, this is like, it's a lot of hearsay. The only thing Spielberg has ever officially said about Twilight Zone, the movie, was that no film was worth dying for. He's correct. Mm-hmm. And apparently his friendship, and apparently it was a real friendship he had with John Landis, apparently he completely distanced himself from Landis after this. Landis is still kind of a divisive figure because of this. And there were many, and apparently Spielberg was among them, who believed that the film should never be released.
Interesting.
And then it did come out a year later. So anyway, so this is a good time to talk about Spielberg's contribution to the film, because originally the Spielberg contribution was a dark entry. Originally, Spielberg was going to remake an episode from the series called The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, about what happens when a neighborhood becomes aware of the end of the world, and this family has a basement where a few of the neighbors can hide, but all the neighbors want in. So it becomes the neighbors going at war with each other. It's very dark. It's still real riveting. It's fantastic. And apparently after the tragedy, Spielberg wanted nothing to do with dark material. So it was decided, like, he's going to do this really light episode. And by the way, I don't think Kick the Can was ever one of the great Twilight Zone episodes. He shot it in 6 days. And what we have, I think, kind of speaks for itself.
So the second part, the second movie in this film is called Kick the Can. And
Scatman Crothers.
I actually really liked this part of the movie.
Oh, boy.
I was like, oh, this is sweet. Like, it was kind of like a nice little break after you have like weird, monster guy on the road, and then Mr. Racist, and then okay, now we get a little break, and then we go back to like very strange and then freaky. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I thought it was like a nice little respite. But
and when I've shown this to my film classes, I remember I have had students say it was their favorite part of the movie for that reason. They don't like how dark the rest of the film is, but they like how light and cute this is.
Yeah. Exactly. You like dark things.
I like dark things, but this is ridiculous. This sequence is so clumsy. Look, the fact that it was shot in 6 days, it shows. It's really clumsy. The staging of it, the timing of it.
Okay, well, let's talk about it, because it's like, it takes place at an old folks' home. Sunnyvale. And there's just like a doctor lecturing the elderly at this home. And, oh no, sorry, I'm getting so confused.
That's okay. Mr. Bloom is Scatman Crothers' character, and a bunch of elderly folk are listening to this, this lecture about hygiene and health, and you can still enjoy your sex life, which is weird for a segment that's very cutesy wootsy, but whatever. Yeah,
and then you see like a man, he takes his suitcases out, and he's like, wants to go home with his son and his family for the weekend, and he's like, sorry, Dad, maybe next weekend. So it's just like, okay, like we're kind of just like, now we're immersed in this old folks home world. Yeah. So that guy comes back inside, and, all the old people are hanging out together. And there's Mr. Bloom, who's Scatman Crothers.
From The Shining, of course.
Yes.
And a lot of other great films.
Well, all the old people are just talking about like all the things they can't do anymore.
Right.
Yeah. And he suggests that they play Kick the Can at midnight, you know?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, they're talking about like, oh, one of them, like, I wish I could dance still, I don't know, like, we're in our 40s. Like, these people are in their, like, 80s. Like, we don't know what it's going to be like. So
you think when I'm in my 80s, there's going to be this magical man that's going to come to the old folks' home and be like, hey, you remember when we used to play ColecoVision? I have ColecoVision here. We're going to want to play some Pigs in Space and some Centipede. Like, oh, yes. Oh, that was the days. Oh. Hey, if some magic man came to your old folks' home with a Centipede, like, video game, you'd be stoked. They wheeled in, like, this big full-on arcade. Sure, but then there's problems with that. And all right, so he promises these old folks, like, come play Kick the Can. One of them is very skeptical, but they all agree to it. They all go down, they all go outside at midnight and they play Kick the Can, and then they all turn into children. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Yeah, and pointless, because they go back to being old moments later.
Well, okay.
And they all reject
because they
for some reason.
they don't want to stay as children, but
Why?
because then they were saying, "Oh, I would have to like redo my life all over again," and they don't know if it would be the same, and they don't
Of
want.
course it wouldn't. Who cares?
They don't want to.
You have a second chance.
But they don't want to lose their memories.
They're like immortal. They're like the Highlander. This whole crap about fresh young minds. What a load of crap. No, man. And they go back to being old, but they have fresh young minds.
Yeah, they have fresh young minds. They have a new lease on life because a lot of them were like still physically capable of doing stuff. They just weren't doing anything.
What a bunch of nonsense. If this magical man was really that nice, he would let them stay as children.
It
and
was
help
their
them.
choice. Because one of them did.
Yeah, what the girl loses her wedding ring. It's ridiculous. Like, no, like, look, you're stuck at this retirement home. It's kind of a grim,
one of them
dusty
decides
place.
to stay and become a lost boy.
One of them, yeah. And we get you get Spielberg going like, coming soon, Hook, at a theater near you.
Okay, so they go back to bed as children. They wake up old, and they have a new lease on life. And then you find out
one of them decides to stay a kid, and it stays a kid, and he runs out the window and goes, "Tally ho!" and he seemingly flies away like Peter Pan.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, okay, well, what's gonna happen to this one kid? Like, his parents are dead. He's an old man.
It's 1983.
What
I
is
mean,
he
can
gonna-
he just go to high school? He's not going to fit in. Hey, man, you played your ColecoVision? Oh, it's a wing ding doodle of a day. How are you guys doing?
Like, do his kids become his parents?
Do you guys like the Jitterbug? Boy, George, who's that? Do you guys like Glenn Miller?
Okay, so then you find out
Eddie Murphy. Have you guys ever heard of the Three Stooges of the Marx Brothers?
that Mr. Bloom then goes to like another old folks home, and they're like, "Oh, we've been expecting you." And I'm like, this guy just goes around.
Keep this guy away. And by the way, Scatman Crothers, wonderful, charming, but like this material is insufferable. I mean, if we want to go there, I mean, he's basically playing Uncle Remus. So, of course, this segment of the movie is not going to hold up. But you know what? Nothing about this holds up. It's got the Spielbergian glow. It looks like a parody of a Spielberg movie. It's weird because he had just done E.T. And E.T., there's such a precision to the imagery. And here, it's like it's really clumsy and stagey. There's that moment where Scatman Crothers' Mr. Bloom like leans right into that camera and goes, "I think he's going to get..." Like, it's so like... sugary and gross.
Sugary and
This
gross.
is like if Cocoon was a 2-minute Hallmark commercial, it would be this. Because Cocoon is gritty. This is dumb. Okay, and by the way, the little kids, they're adorable. Okay, they're really adorable, but they're playing old. They're not playing characters. They're playing old people caricatures.
That's true.
It's really embarrassing. Like, these are not great child performances. Great child performers. But because the material is so hackneyed, these kids are like saying the most, "I remember when my uncle died," like coming from like an 8-year-old who looks like she's out of a McDonald's commercial. Like, this is so bad. I hate this. And you know, it's interesting to watch because, like, wow, like, you know, Spielberg, this is, I mean, in this decade in particular, I mean, he's just knocking them out of the park every time. You know, blockbusters left and right, and deservedly so. I mean, he's a fantastic filmmaker. He is. But this sucks. I hate this part of the movie so much. I do wish it were darker. I do wish Spielberg had made The Monsters Were Due on Maple Street. Because I'll say it again, Kick the Can is not one of the great Twilight Zone episodes. It isn't. It's weird to me that he even gravitated towards this. What I would have preferred, if you're going to do an episode that's sentimental and sweet and moving, there's an episode of Twilight Zone. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's called Walking Distance. It's about a man who goes to his old town. Suddenly, he realizes that it's back to the days of his youth, and he encounters himself as a young boy. It's so beautiful and moving. Why didn't Spielberg do that instead of this nonsense of like, kick the can?
Yeah. Did you ever kick the can?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't like run, you know, with the tire and a stick through it either. You know, I didn't play marbles. No, this is like Great Depression games. No, I played hopscotch. I did jump rope. And then I had ColecoVision and I never left the house. And I had cable TV, so I never left my playroom.
That's hilarious.
No,
Okay.
no. Did you ever play Kick the Can?
No. That's why I'm wondering.
No, this is
Maybe that was like something like your dad did or his dad. I don't know.
this is like playing jacks or like pinochle or
Okay, well, I did.
tiddlywinks.
I did.
Who wants to play tiddlywinks?
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's move on to the third one.
Yay! And this is where the film gets good. And man, like that's the problem with these anthology movies when you have like, it's like different movies within one movie. There's always at least one that drags it down. I'm not in love with the timeout segment, but God, Kick the Can, man. But then like the movie just kind of course corrects itself. Like everything about it just gets better. The Jerry Goldsmith score gets out of the gooey oogie parody of John Williams, and we've got Kathleen Quinlan driving, and she goes to this little diner, and when the diner is run by Dick Miller, one of our great character actors, and he's naming all these towns that she's passing, and he's just like really just dropping all these Twilight Zone references. All these towns are towns that are famous from the series.
Oh.
And she sees a little boy playing an arcade game. Awesome, an arcade game. And it's I love these the introduction. She's a school teacher. She's on a road trip by herself, and the little boy is harassed in the diner. He runs outside. She's backing up. She doesn't realize that she basically hits him with her car while he's on his bicycle.
Bends his bike.
Yeah.
Like messes it up. And then he's like, well, maybe you can give me a ride home. So she's like, okay. So
Did you notice the name of the restaurant though?
what?
Sandwiches and Seafood.
Ew.
Does that sound right to you?
No, that seems weird. Are you sure that's the name of the restaurant and not just like...
No, it said Sandwiches and Seafood, which is, again, like, I think it should be reversed for one thing. But still, it's like, okay, the sandwiches, we're talking like tuna fish sandwiches? And it's a bar.
Yeah.
Do people go out to, is like this town so sad? Like, this is like let's go to Sandwiches and Seafood tonight.
Just like a generic movie restaurant name. But so this little guy tells Helen, yeah, it's my birthday and my family is not even celebrating me today. And, he seems like a really sweet kid.
Yeah, very sweet.
Yeah. And so when they get to the house, oh man, I had deja vu watching this one because I think I had seen this one before.
The boy's name is Anthony.
Yeah. And they go into Anthony's house and it's like weird because you see his uncle and his sister just like watching some kind of cartoon show in the living room.
The sister is played by Yeardley Smith, the voice of Bart Simpson.
Oh.
Yeah, and you could, if you know to listen for it, you can totally tell.
Oh, okay. I didn't know to listen for that.
And the other uncle is played by Kevin McCarthy, the wonderful actor who starred in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He's also in a few Joe Dante. Joe Dante directed this segment, and he also figures in Joe Dante's Inner Space. Anyway, so we meet the kid's parents, his family rather, and they seem to be pretty nuts.
They seem insane.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you want to stay for dinner? Yes, that's a great idea. And so then they tell her, oh, she's like, well, can I go wash my hands? And so they're like, yeah. And so they like take her purse and her sweater and she goes upstairs and they just start rummaging through her stuff like little savages.
If you know the twist, the moment always disturbs me a lot because it says a lot about these people who are probably starving or, they have not had an encounter with the outside world.
Exactly.
I don't know, it bothers me. Like I look at it now, like it's
because
so
at first you're
unsettling.
like, okay, are they trying to steal from her? Like, are they thieves? Like, they just seem like completely insane.
Yeah, if you know the twist and you rewatch these performances, like it bothers me, frankly. I used to find this part of the movie really funny. Now it's like, this is so creepy.
Yeah, because then Helen and Anthony are upstairs and I don't know, like the house is really strange. And then there's like a room with a girl watching more cartoons and he's like, that's my sister. That's my older sister. And you never Helen doesn't see her face, but then you see her face and she has no mouth.
No mouth.
It's like a weird thing from like the Matrix, like when Neo, gets his mouth like closed up.
Well, it also presents some questions like, how does she eat?
Yeah, exactly. How is she alive?
How does she brush her teeth?
Does she have teeth?
Yeah. Because like the look in her eyes, it's like she's just been staring at this TV for who knows how long. Who knows how long this existence of hers has been. Yeah, it's deeply disturbing. There's also pictures on the wall of a family, but no one has a face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they head back downstairs, and the mom like sets them all down in the living room in front of the TV, and she's like, "Wait, I don't remember where dinner is." And Anthony's like, "Isn't it in the oven?" And she's like, "Oh, you're right. I mean, it's..."
And then Kevin McCarthy, as the uncle, tries to make a joke of it. He goes, "She never knows.
She never remembers."
Love it. Oh, it's great.
Yes,
it's
she
great.
never remembers.
Yeah.
And so then the mom brings dinner, and it's so nasty. It's like a hamburger
With peanut butter
inside.
and potato chips.
And like those like ice cream swirl cups. It's like vanilla and like strawberry swirl. It's like,
It's birthday party food.
yeah. And Helen's like, "So wow, is this how you eat all the time?" And they're like, "Yeah, this is what Anthony loves." And then she's like, "Oh, I know why. It's your birthday." And then the family is just like horrified. They're like, "His birthday again?"
Another birthday.
Yes.
And then it starts to turn because Anthony in particular is annoyed with his sister, and he uses what seems like a psychic ability to knock the plate off of her lap. And that's, I think, when the teacher, Kathleen Quinlan's character...
Is that before or after the uncle has to do the
That's
rabbit?
right before.
Oh, okay.
Because she's ready to bolt. I mean, they're clingy, they're weird. The kid's fine, but the family's weird. She's ready to bolt, and he's like, "No, like my uncle's going to show you this magic trick." And that's when he puts his uncle in the spot. His uncle stands up. There's this weird spotlight suddenly on him.
Yeah.
He manages to pull a rabbit out of a hat, but because, for whatever reason, and it's probably just because Anthony's emotions are in flux, suddenly the rabbit turns into this
Like a
demon rabbit.
Yeah, basically a demon rabbit.
It's so cool.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then, that goes away. And then but before Helen tries to leave, there's a note that she finds in her purse.
I love that note, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, "Anthony is a monster." And Anthony's like, "Who wrote this note?" And everyone's like, I didn't write it. And the family blames...
They're like, "It was Ethel. It was Ethel."
Yeah, they blame the sister. And she's just like, "He is terrible. He's like the worst person." And then you kind of find out none of these people are related to him at all.
Well, what happens to Ethel? He sends her to cartoon land.
Oh, yeah. He sends her into the TV.
And she's suddenly in a cartoon where she is devoured by a cartoon character.
Yeah. And they're just all basically watching her freak out and die.
But yeah, from the conversations, from the flurry of things that are said, it's clear that, this is not Anthony's family. These are people he's acquired, and he will not let them leave.
Yes. Well, he probably killed his real family.
He might have just...
Well, what else would have happened to them?
Well, and Ethel makes that comment that you wouldn't believe it, So I think that is what's suggested, but because we don't know, he might have just transformed them.
Into cartoons?
They may be cartoons. They may be mouthless or eyeless, like the sister.
Oh, they're like in other rooms as like prisoners?
Yeah, they might be other realms. He might have turned them into the furniture. Who knows?
That's true.
Yeah.
It's really creepy.
Yeah.
But and then at one
point... It's the whim of a little boy who has godlike powers.
And then at one point, Helen opens the front door, and it's like just like a big
giant eyeball. Yeah.
So she's
pretty
like,
cool.
"I can't leave."
Yeah.
So what? Her and Anthony end up in some kind of alternate like portal universe.
It is double exposed, so you have like two frames happening at the same time, and it's like this. I don't know. I love the timing of it. It's weird, and it has like this ghostly feel. It's like this transparency for both images, and you see how as she talks him down. She's a teacher, and he, even though he has these incredible powers, he needs he's a student. He needs to be a student. They need each other.
She does not need him. He needs her because he is an unruly, undisciplined little child.
Yes, but like any teacher will tell you, when you have a student like this, the idea is that you nurture and love them to a point where you can kind of disarm how destructive they are. Okay. I'm not speaking from experience, of course.
So she's trying to manipulate him into behaving.
Sure. And when she's able to reach him, that's when the double exposure stops and the two images become one, which I really like. He makes a car materialize, which looks strange like a 1980s car commercial. And they start to drive off together, and he does his little bits of magic. He's just like, no more of that, please. But then, of course, as they're driving off in the distance, you see miles and miles of flowers materialize wherever they're driving.
Yeah, and it's like, are they even driving in the real world?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the other question I ask is like, is this a happy ending?
Yeah, because
is she going to end up like the others?
Yeah, because she's still his prisoner.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the ending of Let the Right One In. It's like, is this an escape, or she is doomed as everybody else in that house?
Yeah.
Can you tame somebody who, is a child? I mean, we don't even know how long Anthony's been a child. Can he grow up? Is puberty going to happen?
I don't know.
Don't you think that? But
he's a psychopath.
Is he? He's a kid.
You don't think that kids can be psychopaths?
I mean, he's like a kid playing with a magnifying glass melting ants, except on a bigger scale.
Yeah, like he realized that he had this power at some point in his life and just went to town.
Well, he wants to get whatever he wants.
Yeah.
But it's, of course, the thing that's so unsettling is that, I mean, he's like somebody abusing his pets, like the people that are living in that house. I mean, when they're eating his birthday party food, you get the sense like, man, they must be starving. Who knows? Who knows the last time they ate? Because they're just like walking on eggshells around this kid.
Right.
But don't you think, I mean, one of the things I really love about this, it feels like a dark comedy about being a parent. Because these parents, in quotations, what they're trying to do with Anthony is not only they're trying to subdue him, they're also like going out of their way to like be like his friend as opposed to his parents. They're letting him eat whatever he wants, do whatever he wants. Like, haven't we, isn't that a weakness of all parent? It's like, do you discipline the child and you cause the great anger to erupt, or do you do whatever you can to keep them,
pacified?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's something here.
And then they end up running your whole house.
Yeah. And that's why you can't let the little Anthonys rule the world, even when they have the ability to do. Because let's face it, most people would say like, oh, my child runs the household and da-da. I've heard that about so many kids.
Just say my dog runs the household, because that's true.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had to walk my dog before we did this podcast. So yeah, no question. Charlotte rules this house.
Okay, but you don't think kids can be psychopaths? Where do you think it starts?
I psychopath is strong, and I don't see Anthony as a psychopath. I see him as a kid. He doesn't quite understand what he has. I don't see him as like Damien Thorne in The Omen.
What? He sent his sister into cartoon land so she would die.
Is she really dead though? He has the ability to make things materialize.
And he took his other sister's mouth away, and now she's like a vegetable.
But when he and the teacher are in limbo, doesn't he say that he sent everybody back to where they wanted to go?
Oh, I don't know.
So I think he basically has the ability to undo every bad thing that he's ever done. He has complete control over this world. Yeah.
He's still like, I wouldn't want to like walk into that crazy cartoon house.
I mean, it would be for one thing, you can only imagine how many times his his captive parents have like lunged for him, Seriously, like you do wonder like how many times that has happened, how many times they've been through this, okay, we got to play act again, we got to be nice, otherwise we know what's going to happen. But again, I think this is kind of a dark commentary about not only how hard it is to raise kids, but also how far we go to like creating perfect appearances. I think I told you once, like back when you and I didn't have kids and I went to lunch with my dear friends at a pizza place and their son, who I think was 4 or 5, it was comical because the two of them were talking to me and their son was just running around this pizza place raising heck. Just like you could hear like silverware dropping, plates being tossed over, and the kids, like I could see him like in my peripheral, like running around laughing, and one of the parents was like, excuse me, and I would see them running around in the background while I'm talking to one parent, and they would switch off, It's like, this is a farce. I'm like, wow, this is what parenthood is like. And sometimes it is.
I mean, okay.
So you can't relate to this at all? You've never felt like our daughter is like...
No, she's pretty well behaved.
She's pretty well behaved, but she's had her moments like, can I have another birthday? I mean, hasn't she ever,
I guess, of course. But what kid doesn't want like another birthday right after their birthday? They're like, when's my next birthday? And you're like, in a year. It just happened.
I mean, take away the magic powers. I mean, we have a child who loves birthday party food, loves cartoons, loves video games from the 80s.
Well, that's true. And we do have to rein it in. We do have to say, like, no, you can't do that all day, every day.
No, Anthony, you cannot.
All right. So that one was nightmarish, and I enjoyed it, though.
This is Joe Dante. Right after this, he went and made Gremlins. Mm-hmm. And then he made movies like The Burbs. And then my favorite, a movie with John Goodman called Matinee. I think Joe Dante is a seriously underrated talent. I love him. He's a very quirky filmmaker. His movies, he's in love with like 50s monster movies, but he's also a very contemporary filmmaker, very hip. And his movies are super cool. And I love this segment. It's like at this point, I'm like, all right, I forgive this movie for the kick the can crap. Like this film is really starting to work. And then we move into our next and final segment.
Yeah, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. So we have our main leading man, John Lithgow, in an airplane bathroom freaking out over the turbulence. And you know what I hated about this part is like the flight attendant is she's just like knocking on the door like incessantly, like nonstop. Like, lady, leave the guy alone. Like, you don't know what he's doing in there.
They're annoyed. He's been in there a while, and clearly he's a nervous passenger. I think like we're not seeing the beginning of this. This is like, he's probably been in and out of that bathroom for a while. Okay.
But she's just like nonstop knocking, and he finally comes out. They get him seated, and he's just like sweating. I mean, the sweat on this man is outrageous.
This is not a top tier airline. This is like SkyWest. Okay. This is like, one of those.
Yeah.
JetBlue.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a JetBlue airline.
Right.
Okay.
Well, what is also very unrealistic is when they put him, like, he's sitting in a seat, he's on the window, and the flight attendant is like standing in front of him. Like, there's no way there's enough room for that.
It's a movie.
I know, but it's outrageous the amount of legroom this man has.
Oh, that's right. You were freaking out about that. I'm like, really? The claustrophobia of this? No, nothing? The intensity of John Lithgow's performance? You were freaking out like, look at that legroom. He can stretch out.
Well, John Lithgow is not a short person.
No, he's a beast. So I'm sure like we gotta find some really big seats for this actor.
I mean, they're like, you know what? We're just gonna make it like he's like in an exit row, not in an exit row. That's how much room he has. Like twice the amount of room that he should.
Yeah, John Lithgow and Harry from Harry and the Hendersons could fit in that seat. It's so spacious. No, agreed.
So. Okay, there's some really strange passengers.
It's a weird flight. It is.
It is.
Yeah, you got the little girl. I love this kid. This little girl was in Cloak and Dagger the year afterwards. She's the one who has a ventriloquist puppet for some reason.
Weird.
She's an unruly little brat, but I love the performance. Like as opposed to Kick the Can, this kid just seems like a really weird, out of control kid, and her mom is asleep, so she just like kind of does whatever she wants.
Yeah, and she's kind of like sitting in front of the John Lithgow character with this like other like man.
There's a big dude sitting right in front of Lithgow. Big dude who initially we're not sure what his deal is. Then there's the old folks behind him. And there's the guy, one of my favorite lines in the movie is like, I think I spilled my drink. I think I spilled my drink.
You think? Okay, so John Lithgow is just like looking out the window.
Yeah.
And he's sitting.
It's a stormy night. There's super turbulence.
Yeah.
He's incredibly nervous. He just read the cover of a newspaper which talks about an airplane crash. So this poor guy, I mean, he's just like, his nerves are shattered. He's freaking out.
I mean, like lightning is striking
the plane.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because the original, this is another remake of a classic episode. The original episode, same title, Nightmare 20,000 Feet, directed by Richard Donner, of all people, and starring William Shatner.
Okay, I thought that's what it was, but
Yeah.
he didn't say the same line, did he?
Yeah, he does. There's a man on the wing of this plane. Yeah.
I thought it was there's a thing on the wing of the plane.
Well, yeah, because of course Lithgow can't say it the way Shatner does.
There was somebody out there. You've got to believe me.
I saw him green and slimy.
Leave the poor man alone.
I'm only trying to help. You got to humor them.
It was lightning. At first I thought it was an animal, some kind of bird or something, but it was a man. There was flames coming out of the engine, and then a flash, and then smoke. Maybe it was a technician who was caught in the plane when it took off. Oh my God, how could he survive out there? The air's too thin, the blast of the wind. It's so cold. It's impossible, isn't it? Oh my God. I feel so stupid. Can you imagine? A naked man crawling along the wing of an airplane at 35,000 feet.
There's no need to feel embarrassed, Mr. Valentine. Just trying to get some sleep.
It's amazing. The mind, how the eyes can make you see something that isn't even there.
And then it seemed three others completely freaking out.
Look, you're just gonna have to deal with it.
It's all right. You don't have to stay with me. I know you have other passengers to attend to.
I'm happy to sit with you till you sleep.
No, it's probably easier for me if I'm alone.
Sure?
Sure. I'm drowsy already. See?
But, by the way, they did do a series together called 30 Rock, where they actually have an episode where their characters are basically talking about.
This episode?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so like there's a 30 Rock bridges the two Twilight. It's goofy. I think the footage is on YouTube. Yeah. But yeah, they made a big joke of it.
That 30 Rock from the Sun show?
Yeah, because William Shatner shows up and he and John Lithgow have a conversation about the time they took that flight and that weird thing that happened. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
If I remember correctly, yeah.
Okay. So he sees some kind of like goblin thing.
It's a gremlin.
Gremlin.
It's a gremlin. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And at first you're not sure what's happening, but it's like...
I love that it's dark and murky, and it looks almost like there's a tarp stuck on the wing. Initially, it's like you don't really know what it is, because the thing that's so goofy, of course, about the original episode, it looks like a big panda bear with like cracked out eyes.
Right.
And I don't know. I think it's kind of hilarious now. It's a great episode. The original episode.
In the original, it kind of looks like a Sasquatch, and this one, it looks more like an alien.
It's clearly, it's like a guy like in a teddy bear suit that's been like worn too many times. And this, it's bizarre initially, its appearance. You don't really know what it is. Just you can clearly see it looks like something that's alive and moving out there.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And at one point, it's like ripping like wires.
Well, that's
out.
the funniest part.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh man, he's so naughty. He's like ripping parts of the plane. He's throwing it into the
naughty.
Like, oh man, like what? I don't know. I think that part of it's actually pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
This whole segment of the movie, it's George Miller, the director of the Mad Max films. And by the way, George Miller, like, I think he's in his 80s. Right now, he's in the desert filming a new Mad Max movie with Anya
Really?
Taylor-Joy. That guy is badass. I mean, he just, like, nothing stops him or slows him down. And this segment of the movie, it's like Poltergeist on a plane. Even though it's, like, stuck in a tube, it's so thrilling and exciting. It's not just... The whole movie, this part of the movie, rather, is at the level of Lithgow's performance. It's hysterical. It's like forward momentum nonstop. The sound effects are tour de force. I love this part of the movie so much.
Well, I love that. So like he tries to go to sleep, then he sees the thing.
And that amazing close up. It's like it's a long shot where he closes the window because he's already thought he's seen it once, and the flight attendant talked him down. So he shuts his window. and he just closes his eyes, and the camera very slowly starts to close up on him. And like anybody, he's wondering, like, is it still out there?
Yeah.
And then finally, when he can't handle it anymore, and the sound of his heartbeat is all over the soundtrack, he opens up the window, and it's right there looking at him. It's so cool.
Yeah, and then he freaks out, the flight attendant comes back, and he's like telling her what he saw, and she's like not saying anything, and he's like, I'm mad, I'm going crazy. And she's like, just take the volume, dude. Like, just here. I'm not supposed to give passengers drugs, but I'm gonna make an exception for you.
Yeah. Yes, and at this point, I think this is when is it the first time, because it happens 2 or 3 times where he freaks out, and then the pilot comes over to talk to him.
Yeah.
It's a really good discussion, really nice, well played by that actor, where he has a talk with the character is, I think, Valentine. That's the name of John Lithgow's character, and he explains to him, like, we lost one of our engines because lightning struck it, but we've got 3 more.
Right.
There's a great possibility
there's nothing out there.
Yeah.
It was the lightning. Yeah. He steals the little girl's camera. She has a Polaroid camera, and he tries to take a picture of this thing. It just ends up being a picture of his reflection.
Yeah,
so he's like,
so funny.
No. And then he steals the gun of the air
There's a
marshal.
scuffle. Yeah, the scuffle with the air marshal. Yeah, the big guy in front of him is an air marshal, and he fights him for his gun, shoots the window, and everything in the plane, it decompresses, and suddenly there's
everything's
debris
flying everywhere.
Oh, it's so cool. The in-flight movie starts to play, which I'd be like, oh, this is great. And so because of the suction, Lithgow is like halfway outside of the plane at this point, which is so crazy. He fires some shots at the gremlin, which is awesome. The gremlin, who has like crazy long like predator hair. In fact, it's very Predator-esque now that I think about it. He runs over to Lithgow, I guess, like turns his gun into a pretzel. We don't quite see it. And he puts his slimy, wet hand on his face. It makes a real, like a sort of sound. And it's this great thing where suddenly they realize the plane is about to land, and the gremlin's like, oh, I got to get out of here. So he does this kind of like this. He shakes his finger at him. I'm not sure what that implies. Like don't tell anyone, maybe?
I don't know.
But then suddenly he jumps up, and it's like he does like this little swirly fly, and then he like vanishes into the clouds. It's the coolest thing. But we cut to Lithgow, an extreme close-up of him looking much better and rested. And he's like, that's how it happened. And I saved the day. And the camera pulls back. We realize he's strapped to a bed that's being put into the back of an ambulance. We see all the members of the flights kind of talking down like what just happened. And, they're trying to figure it out. It's this really nice long shot where we see the maintenance people coming to check out the plane.
And it's just like torn apart.
Yeah. And so I was like, what happened up there? And we realized, oh my gosh, like, it's the real deal. What we said was not imagined. He really did save the day. Although I think it's pretty explicit though, because I think with the TV show episode, the Richard Donner episode, I think we're supposed to have our doubts, and in this case, it's like it's pretty. Yeah, I don't think we're supposed to doubt. I don't think any of these segments we're supposed to doubt the supernatural elements of any of it. I think it's pretty.
Okay, but you're missing the very last part. Where he's in the ambulance, and then you see Dan Aykroyd is the ambulance driver, and he puts in his Creedence Clearwater Revival tape into the tape deck and drives off. And you're like,
well, yes, the closing line. You want to see something really scary?
Yeah. So was he the gremlin on the plane?
Oh, that's a cool idea.
That's what I was thinking.
I mean, it's a different monster. I can vouch for that. I know the creature designs. It's different, but. That's fun, actually, to think of it that way. If Aykroyd's character is like this impish creature that just kind of travels around.
And we don't know if he can't like shapeshift into other things.
What's your superpower? I love to scare people. I make them pull over and I scare them.
I like to tear apart airplanes in the air.
I love Halloween, and I love to go on planes.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
It's interesting. No, I had not considered that. I like it.
Yeah. But our movie comes full circle.
Yeah.
They actually try and, make it more cohesive.
Yeah, and apparently, this will be the last thing I say about this, but when they were, kind of reconfiguring the film following the tragedy, and they were trying to figure out what to do, plus the Spielberg segment completely changed, apparently the order of the film altered. I heard one version, nobody has really a straight story anymore about what happened. I suspect most people involved in this movie don't even want to talk about it or remember it with a lot of clarity. But apparently there was an ending where I heard someone say there was an ending where Vic Morrow survived the Holocaust. And the movie actually ended with his segment, and he hitchhikes and he's picked up by Dan Aykroyd. I've heard that.
Oh, interesting.
I've heard but I mean, I don't even know if they shot that or that was originally scripted or maybe that was a script before everything happened. Apparently the order of the segments was switched. Like originally Nightmare 20,000 Feet was not the last one. Yeah, so I mean, apparently there was a lot of shifting. What I'm trying to say is the epilogue was shot later. It was never part of the plan, so I guess they got Dan Aykroyd back in there. And it's a very it's dark but lighthearted way to end this film. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To end a movie about racism and getting old and being a terrible parent and fear of flying. So really, not your lighthearted summer fare.
So how many stars did you give it?
I love what all the critics did back in the day, and I'm going to steal it, which is to rate every single segment. Okay. So 3 stars. 3 stars. 3 stars. I think that's fair. 3 stars for the opener. I love the opening of this movie. 2 stars for Time Out. As much as I admire Vic Morrow's performance, and I think there's a lot of admirable and compelling things about that segment, it's ugly. And had everything been, had the tragedy not happened, or if they had decided just to include all the footage they shot, I still don't think it would have worked. I think it would have been even worse. I don't like the idea of catharsis of it, like, you got to walk in someone's shoes to understand how wrong racism is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think the moralizing of it completely works. Obviously, it's about empathy, and eliminating the sequence where Bill saves the kids. It kind of loses the quality of like the Scrooge thing of like, him, Scrooge is all about him learning to love Tiny Tim, and we don't have that here. So it's kind of like just a guy who experiences what other people have experienced, and then it makes him a better person at the end? Not really.
Well, no, I mean, he ends up dying.
He ends up dying, but like, again, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it plays almost more like a revenge fantasy than it is about someone who discovers empathy or compassion. Yeah. I don't know. It's a gauntlet of ugliness. Mm-hmm. We're hearing racial slurs nonstop in this thing. The part about the Nazis is probably the most lighthearted part of that whole segment. It's really ugly. So I don't like it. I admire things about it. But yeah, it's obviously the haunted part of this movie. So 2 stars. 1 star for Kick the Can. I hate it.
Okay.
The one part of it I love is where Scatman Crothers at the end is walking away and he's got his stick and he's like improvising a little song. What are you doing sitting around moping? Love that. As he walks away, it's like, aw, I love you, Scatman. Too bad I had to sit through 5 minutes of torture to get to this little moment. And then, we get to... It's a Good Life? It's a Good Life. Yeah, 3 stars. Wonderful. Wonderful, weird, creepy, and unsettling, but great. And then 4 stars for...
that's your favorite.
Hands down. I think it's just so thrilling. I love it. I think it's one of the underappreciated gems of George Miller's amazing career. So I think 3 stars for the film overall. I think it all evens out to about 3 stars for me.
Yeah.
How about you?
That makes sense. I mean, I would say, sure, 3 stars.
You like Kick the Can. It's your favorite one, isn't it? You would watch the whole movie again just to watch that, wouldn't you?
No, but after like the first 2...
You love those fresh young minds.
Fresh young minds. I mean, after the first, like the opener and then, super racist guy, it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is like, I don't know, I just like enjoyed it. And not saying that your criticism...
The day we stop playing is the day we start getting old.
Your criticisms are valid, but...
Or that creepy moment where the boy is chasing the little girl and the little boy says, AJ, get away from my wife! So creepy, weird.
So, yeah, but overall, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the movie is a curiosity item, and I feel like a lot of contemporary young people are discovering it because they do an internet search and they learn the terrible backstory of the film, which is a whole other thing. I do feel like the movie's probably most enjoyable for people who don't know about any of that stuff.
Oh yeah, because I was like, oh, is this the one with the accident? And then you said no.
Well, I wasn't lying to you. I what I meant was you don't see any of it in the film. It's not like one of those movies
I
where...
watched it not thinking that it was like a different Twilight Zone movie, because I don't know how many Twilight Zone movies there are.
So far.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, oh, maybe that was a different movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if I had known that, it may have changed my view of that first part. You know,
Yeah.
like it maybe would have been even harder to watch than it already was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's already an uncomfortable sequence, but knowing the full story, you do kind of watch it with a sense of dread. You do. Yeah. You know, but the thing that doesn't get noted enough, I do think Vic Morrow's performance, even though it suffered in editing and whatnot, I think he's quite good, even though the material itself is very hard to take. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. Serling often. What I loved about the original series, and I'll wrap it up here, but I'll just say, like, Serling used the Twilight Zone to talk about things that concerned him. It was a way to talk about what was going on in the 60s. It was a way to talk about civil rights, about racism, about inequality, about bigotry. Like, you know, and there are episodes of his series that are also very powerful and dark, but there's a brilliance to them. There's a subtlety to it. I feel like the Landis sequence is trying way too hard, and I think that's why it doesn't quite sit well with me. But on the other hand, Joe Dante's It's a Good Life, and especially Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, I feel it's tour de force filmmaking. Everybody, all the actors are wonderful, and I feel like the last two segments really make this movie worthwhile. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. Agreed. Do you have any other final thoughts?
I don't. I've always wanted there to be another Twilight Zone movie just because I love the Twilight Zone so much. What's interesting is this film, it was kind of a mid-range. It wasn't a huge hit. It wasn't a flop. It was kind of right in the middle, which Hollywood studios hate when that happens. But it did inspire a lot of spin-off concepts. Like, for one thing, Spielberg did his own Twilight Zone. He did a series called Amazing Stories, which I quite like, although it was very hit and miss. Twilight Zone came back to TV 2 years later. The 80s version of the Twilight Zone, which I love. There's a lot of gems in that series.
The Tower of Terror.
And, of course, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror.
Yeah, at Disney World.
When visiting Disney parks, make sure you check out the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror.
Not sponsored. They're not sponsoring this podcast.
They are not sponsored. They do not know or care about this podcast. But yeah, we do. We've been on that a few times. So much fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, I have no other thoughts.
So greatest Twilight Zone episodes, I'd say Walking Distance. Walking Distance, and Eye of the Beholder, Time Enough at Last, the original Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And The Jungle. That's a scary episode. Yeah, good episodes.
All right.
Classic syrup.
Well, that concludes our episode of Twilight Zone, the movie.